previous video, we looked at the relationship between perfect square trinomials, or in all perfect square trinomials. We said that your value of a is 1, and we said that your value for c is b over 2 squared, right? And that once you find this relationship, you know you're dealing with a perfect square trinomial. So that means that if you see an equation, you should be able to tell, is this a perfect square trinomial or is it not, right? Is it a perfect square or is it not? The second thing we looked at is that they are generally of the form, right? So that means that if you have a perfect square trinomial that you've confirmed that it is a perfect square trinomial, you can rewrite it as a binomial, as a square binomial, by simply saying x plus b over 2 all squared, right? It's not so difficult. Okay, let me do a quick example. Let's have x squared plus 8x. Right? So if I want to make this a perfect square, I know that my value for c should be 8 over 2 all squared, so which is 16. Okay, good. So I have this, right? I have this as a perfect square. It's a perfect square trinomial. So if I want to write it as a binomial now, a square binomial, I can just put it this way and say, hold up, give me a moment. Yeah, that would be x plus b over 2, which would be 4. So x plus 4 all squared, right? And if you expand this, you would get this. If you factorize this, you would get this, right? But again, I said we don't just want to have to keep on doing that every time. So it's better, since it's simple enough, it's better we just know it. Okay, so let's look at this. It says complete the square. Okay, good. So we want to complete them and write as a square binomial. Okay, so pause the video, try this out yourself. Let's see, right? Pause the video, try it out. Let's see. Okay, I expect you're back now. X squared minus 12x. So I'm going to put here b over 2 is minus 6. Minus 6 squared is plus 36, right? So plus 36. Okay, good. And if I want to write it as a square binomial, it's going to be x minus 6 all squared, right? Because that's b over 2. For this one, it's going to be plus b over 2 squared. So my c has to be 25. My c has to be 25. And then if I want to write it as a perfect square, it's going to be x plus 5 all squared. Right? X plus 5 all squared. We're getting somewhere. This one is x squared plus 7x. I need to put plus, that's 7 over 2 squared, right? Let me do that somewhere. Squared, which would be, that should be 49 over 4, right? So plus 49 over 4, which is equal to, so this is equal to x plus 7 over 2 all squared. Finally, for this one, we have, yep, this is plus 1, because b over 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. So it's going to be equal to x plus 1 squared. Good. So I just wrote them now as perfect square trinomials first, right? All this. And then we were able to now write them as the equivalent square binomial, right? Equivalent square binomial. Okay, good. Let me wipe this off. I might need the space. All right. The next task we have here is asking us to check if the trinomials are perfect squares, and then we should write them as square binomials. Okay, so I need a bit of space for this. So we need to test, right? Yep, we need to test if they are perfect squares. 14. So that means that if they were going to be perfect squares, a has to be 1, which it is already. So what we'll do is we need to check for c. My c is supposed to be equal to b over 2 all squared, right? So that means my c is supposed to be equal to 14 over 2, that's 7 squared, which gives us 49. So I'm supposed to have 49 here, right? That's 14 over 2 squared, but that's not the case. So this is not a perfect square. It's not a perfect square binomial. Okay, let's look at this one. First of all, my a is supposed to be 1, which it isn't. So what we do here is we'll divide through by 1, right? Or factor out 1. But for the sake of this course, though, we'll be dividing by 1. So let's divide everything here by -1 rather. -1, so that we can have our a as 1. So we're going to have, if we divide everything here by -1, we're going to have x squared minus 4.6x plus 5.29, right? So now we can test. Let's test our c. That's our c should be b over 2 squared. That would be b over 2 would give you 2.3, negative 2.3, and if you square that, you would have 5.29, right? So negative 2. So you can try to work this out in your calculator and stuff. You would see that I'm saying the truth. So that means that our value, we can now make it a perfect square. Our value for this would be x minus 2.3 all squared, right? Because that's b over 2 squared, right? You can watch it again if it's a bit confusing, but really there's not much to it. All right, we have this one. I need space now for this one. The first thing we need to do is we need to divide everything by 2, right? -2 actually, to get a as 1. Okay, so if I divide everything, let me do this here. Good. Now, sometimes in this particular topic, you'd have to divide fractions by, divide fractions. So what I advise you to do at that point is just multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is this and this would give me x squared, which is what I'm actually going to test. This and this will give me -1 over 2. Actually, +1 over 2, +1 over 2. And then this and this would give me, so that would be 1 over 4 divided by -2. So I can do 1 over 4 by 1 over -2, which gives me 1 over -8, right? If I do that, so I multiplied by 1 over -2 instead. So this is half x, and so this would give me -1 over 8. Now I can test. No, it's not, because if I divide this by 2, I get 1 over 4. If I square 1 over 4, I get 1 over 16, right? So it is not. This is not. Okay. All right. So finally, this one. Okay, this is not so bad. A is already 1, so we are good with that. We just need to square. We just need to square 1 over 3. Divide 1 over 3 by 2 and then square. So if I do that, I would have so I'll multiply it by half since I want to divide it by 2, like I said, which would give me 1 over 6. If I square 1 over 6, it gives me 1 over 36, not 1 over 12. So this is wrong. So it's not. So we only had one actually, which was, this one here. That was the only one that was. But the process is simple, right? Again, we said A is 1 and C is that, right? And to test, all we have to do is just test both these two things. Make A 1 and then try to check if C is equal to B over 2 squared, right? Okay, that's it for this. Thank you. See you next time.